I was going through my third round of chemotherapy when something unusual caught my eye on the bank app. For reasons I can't fully explain, I decided to check the joint account statement, a habit I never had. But that day something inside urged me to look. There were 3 large transfers. One of them stood out, $346.20. My stomach sank and I felt like my soul nearly slipped away. The money had been sent straight from our joint account to a name I unfortunately knew all too well, Jessica Parker. She was the wellness consultant my husband had hired to help me during my treatment. Over the past few months he had barely laid a hand on me, saying he needed space, claiming it was too painful for him to see me like that the entire situation was just too overwhelming. In the beginning he attended my sessions, held my hand, brought me juice and reassured me that everything would turn out fine. But after my 6th chemo session the excuses began. He said the atmosphere was too depressing, that it drained his energy, left him emotionally exhausted, even traumatized, until eventually he just stopped showing up altogether. That same week he went on what he called a spiritual retreat, supposedly to come back renewed and better equipped to support me. What he didn't realize was that while he was supposedly recharging, probably right beside his mistress shamelessly draining my money, I was gathering a strength from a place he would never comprehend. And when he finally returned he learned that I was capable of things he could never have imagined, not even in his worst nightmares. My name is Emily Dawson and this is my revenge story. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Here I share real and emotional stories that prove sometimes the most powerful revenge doesn't come through yelling, but through sharp intelligence and careful strategy. I thought I was ready for anything, but nothing prepares you for the moment your own body becomes a battlefield. Chemotherapy crashed into my life like a violent storm. My skin burned constantly and my hair came out in clumps, leaving patches on my pillow. And still I found myself apologizing for being weak, for crying too often, for simply needing help. My husband, Ryan, kept saying he was there for me, that this was only temporary, but his eyes told a completely different story. At first he comforted me, wrapped his arms around me, cracked silly jokes in the waiting room, told me how strong I was and promised it would all pass. But as the treatments got harsher he began to drift away. It started with small delays, then longer silences, and soon came the endless excuses. Meetings, heavy traffic, bad energy. And eventually one day there were no messages at all. I realized I was facing this battle alone, even though his name still appeared as my husband. The day I made the decision to shave my head was deeply symbolic to me. A way to reclaim some control, a show of courage. I asked him to be there for me. But he said he couldn't handle seeing me like that it was too much for him. I pretended to understand, forced a smile during our phone call, and went to the salon by myself. The woman who shaved my head wept more than I did. I returned home with my head wrapped in a red scarf my mother had given me. Ryan wasn't home, he said he needed to clear his head. That night I slept alone, my scalp throbbing, my pillow cold, and a heavy silence in the room that seemed to mock my pain. My doctor eventually advised me to stop working and take a break from all the stress. Ryan was thrilled. He insisted he would take care of everything: bills, groceries, medications. As long as you're here, just focus on getting better, he said. And I believed him, because in that phase, any small gesture of care feels like a lifeline. I started sleeping more, letting him handle everything. I stopped checking the finances. He was the only one using the joint account. I truly thought I was in good hands. And for a while I was, until I started noticing little changes. Ryan seemed far too cheerful, like someone living a separate life, completely detached from the pain I was enduring. He began going out more, claiming he was taking breathwork classes to become a better support system, saying he needed to learn how to properly care for someone in my condition. I didn't question it, it sounded noble. But with this new Ryan came his total absence. The chemo sessions were long, the tests exhausting, and the worst part was having no one to share it with. Even his texts grew cold, short, emotionless, without any real care. Then came his so-called solution. He told me, "I've hired a holistic consultant. She'll stay with you, help take care of you." Her name was Jessica Parker. At first I wanted to believe he was making an effort. Jessica was kind, gentle, always making ginger lemon tea. But something about her felt too invasive. Her perfume was overwhelmingly sweet. She seemed to know everything: my test results, my medications, the schedule of my treatments. Ryan constantly quoted her. "Jessica said this. Jessica thinks that. Ask Jessica." I was the one battling cancer, but she was the one filling every inch of my life. When they both vanished for 2 days on some breathwork retreat, I started putting the pieces together. Looking back, I see now that he never even tried to hide it. But there was still one thing missing: solid proof that I wasn't just being paranoid. During one chemo session, sitting there alone, I paid for a test using the bank app. It was something Ryan usually handled. But that day I felt the urge to check the account statement after the payment. That's when I saw 3 large transfers. One of them was for $346,720. Felt like my entire world just froze. Sitting there in the clinic's waiting room with the 4 needles still in my arm, I suddenly realized he hadn't just betrayed me, he had stolen from me. The nurses moved past me, oblivious. I sat there, paralyzed, as my phone slipped from my hand, the screen still glowing. My life was consumed by tests, injections, and the fragile hope of survival. His was filled with spas, wire transfers, yoga sessions, and fresh starts. But what Ryan didn't know was that even though my body was weak, my spirit was beginning to awaken. And when a woman wakes up, especially one carrying both pain and the fire for revenge, there's no stopping her. In that moment, I made myself a promise. I would make him feel 1,000 times worse than I did right then. But for that, I needed a plan. One carefully structured, executed with icy precision. Eventually, Ryan stopped pretending altogether. He began treating me like someone already doomed, like a woman with only a few months left. He took long naps, went out constantly to unwind, bought expensive wines as if he had something to celebrate. While I lay in bed, nauseous and dizzy, he claimed he needed to clear his head. And that's when it hit me. In his mind, I wouldn't survive longer than another 3 months. He had already accepted my death and was living like a widower even while I was still breathing. Worse, he was spending as if everything I owned, including my mother's inheritance, was some kind of jackpot he'd won and couldn't wait to burn through. That inheritance was my safety net, the one thing my mother had always told me to protect. She used to say, "Emily, this money is your shield. Never depend on any man." But when I got sick, I just couldn't manage everything. I didn't have the strength. Ryan had offered to handle the finances and I trusted him. I loved him. I never imagined that after 10 years together, the man I married would take advantage of his own wife during chemotherapy. He told me he wanted to spare me the stress and I believed him. But now everything made sense. The luxury purchases, the frequent absences, the joy on his face I hadn't seen in years. While I was fighting for my life, he was already using my money to build his new one. I'll never forget those dark, lonely days, feeling my heartbeat slow in the silence. But then I remembered my mother, and the promise I whispered at her funeral: I won't be weak. I won't let anyone erase me like they erased you. I took a deep breath as cold rage crawled up my spine. For the first time, I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to fight back. And I would make him pay for every single moment he treated me like I was already dead. When he returned from his so-called retreat, he walked in smiling, holding a strange necklace with colorful stones. He said it would help align my healing energy, that I had attracted this illness into my life, but that with enough positive energy I could cure myself. I smiled calmly, thanked him, and once he went upstairs to shower, I opened his laptop. My hands were shaking, my body still weak, but I forced myself to dig through every statement, every transfer, every single expense. That's when I found it. A name, a number, an address. None of it was mine, but every bit of it was paid for with my money. In that moment, my skin went cold, my eyes burned, but my mind was clear. If death was circling me, it would have to wait. Because before I left this world, I would destroy his first. One statement showed a recent payment, $2,800 as a deposit, plus 2 months of rent already paid. The account holder, Jessica Parker. The destination, an address I didn't recognize. It stuck in my mind until I remembered something. Ryan had this terrible habit of saving receipts in random folders on his computer. I opened the one labeled Future Projects, which he usually used for work drafts, and there it was. A PDF file titled Lease Unit 1702. The lease was under Jessica's name, but the payments came directly from him. The apartment was clear across town, complete with a balcony, lake view, and brand new appliances. All selected and paid for with my money. My stomach twisted as I stared at that document. It was the unspoken truth he never had the courage to admit out loud. He was already building his new life, fully convinced I wouldn't be around to witness it. The very next day I asked my sister to drive me to the address. I didn't tell her the real reason, just said I needed some fresh air. When we arrived, I stayed in the car across the street watching from behind the window. Ryan came out not long after wearing light, expensive clothes, laughing on the phone like he hadn't a care in the world. Right behind him was Jessica holding his hand wearing one of my necklaces. In that moment I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt only one thing with absolute clarity: this would not end like this. And with my weak body and burning soul, I began carefully crafting a plan to destroy both of them publicly, with the same cold cruelty they used to erase me in my most vulnerable moment. The next day Jessica arrived at the house carrying fresh juice, a flower tucked into her hair and a sickeningly calm smile. "You need to keep your mind peaceful, Emily," she said softly as if I were a child. As if she wasn't the one sleeping with my husband while I fought to stay alive. I pretended it didn't hurt. Pretended I knew nothing. But every one of her gestures, every fake word of care, was just a disguised insult. She tended to me like someone caring for a wounded bird, just waiting for it to die. But I didn't cry anymore, not from anger or humiliation. I simply observed. She made my bed like it belonged to her, stored my medications alongside my old letters. She was everywhere, rehearsing to take my place with my silent permission. When she stepped out to buy, of course, flowers, I opened Ryan's laptop, created a new folder and named it Evidence. Every receipt, every bank statement, every email screenshot Ryan forgot to delete. I calmly, coldly, strategically gathered them all. Because if they thought I would die quietly, they were dead wrong. I was still here. And now I was dangerous. I contacted the attorney who handled my mother's inheritance. I went to his office in person, though I was shaking from weakness, and handed him the folder filled with evidence. I told him everything. He looked at me with the seriousness of someone who fully understood the weight of the situation. "You have a strong case, Emily. And if you take this to court, he'll come out of it worse than you can imagine." That was all I needed. I didn't want a scandal. I wanted strategy and justice. In the days that followed, I kept up the act. I let Ryan kiss me on the forehead like he was some kind of hero. I let Jessica make chamomile tea, rub ointment on my skin, and fill the house with her sweet, poisonous voice. She didn't do it out of kindness. She did it because she already believed the house was hers. And I let her because now I was gathering evidence. He was good at pretending. But I was better. I faked gratitude. Faked weakness. Faked ignorance. And meanwhile my evidence folder kept growing. Slowly my soul started to breathe again, because the more she served me with that rehearsed smile, the more I knew that what was coming next would be even better, sharper and far more destructive. Then one night Jessica left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, and I saw the message that would seal both of their fates. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was criminal. Pretending I was looking for some medication, I quietly approached the counter. The chat was labeled Ryan. With one quick swipe I opened it, and the very first message knocked the air out of my lungs. "She's getting worse fast. Soon we'll have it all wrapped up." I scrolled slowly, reading how they discussed me like I was already dead. Just an obstacle, a burden they couldn't wait to remove. They were talking about the money, the final transfer, closing everything. Ryan wrote, "The next step is getting everything squared away with the lawyer." Jessica responded with a heart emoji. I quickly snapped a photo of the screen and emailed it to myself. Then, as if nothing had happened, I returned to the living room, sat on the couch and waited. Jessica came in, handed me a cup of tea, tucked the blanket around me and softly wished me good night. I thanked her, nearly smiled, but deep inside something had shifted. I was no longer just a betrayed wife. I was now a victim holding undeniable proof of their conspiracy. The following morning I reached out to one of my mother's old friends, someone who worked in security systems and still owed our family a favor. I explained that I needed a discreet camera installed in the hallway between the kitchen and the bedroom. She didn't ask questions. By the end of the day it was set up and I could access the footage right from my phone. Little by little I became addicted to watching. Lying in bed with headphones in, I observed them moving through the house like I was just part of the furniture. Ryan would pull Jessica close by the waist in the kitchen as they discussed their new apartment. Jessica went through my belongings like she already owned everything. And now, every bit of it was being recorded. A week later I captured a full conversation. They were discussing my inheritance. Jessica pushed Ryan to speed things up. He hesitated, saying he needed to wait for the final medical report. she snapped. "What are you waiting for? For her to die naturally." The camera caught it all. Even the heavy silence that followed, the silence of two people fully in agreement. That night, I saved the video and immediately sent it to my lawyer. For the first time in what felt like forever, I slept peacefully. My body remained weak, but my mind had never been sharper. And I knew my revenge had every piece it needed to be flawless. I began playing my role even more convincingly, pretending to grow weaker by the day. I faked longer coughing fits, spoke slower, sighed more dramatically. Ryan would ask, "Do you want Jessica to stay the night?" And I would shake my head gently, offering a sad smile. "I'd rather be alone," I whispered. They believed me because they wanted to believe me. Meanwhile, I was secretly recovering. Bit by bit, the fever subsided, the nausea faded, but I kept pretending. Every groan was part of the act. Every sigh, another layer of protection. Ryan started lowering his guard, certain that everything was under control. Jessica, though more cautious, would glance at me sideways, but she had no real proof. Me. I had plenty. One evening, I caught another damning recording. The hidden camera captured Ryan on the phone with someone from the bank, inquiring about early liquidation of joint assets. His tone was cold, clinical, as if I no longer existed. That night, before bed, Ryan knocked on my door holding an envelope. He said it was just some security paperwork, nothing urgent. I smiled faintly, my voice soft and low, and said, "Leave it on the dresser. I'll sign it tomorrow, if I'm still alive." Once he left, I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a formal request to transfer the only money still in my name and not yet touched by our joint accounts. He told me he had found an incredible treatment overseas, a clinic in Toronto offering modern, less aggressive therapies. He said he had already contacted them, that they required an upfront deposit, and that if I truly wanted to survive, I couldn't waste precious time on paperwork. But I checked. The clinic didn't exist. The email was fake. It was all part of his scam. Ryan actually thought that on top of being sick, I was also stupid. That particular account was the only one I had never let him touch, and he knew it. His plan was to leave me with nothing, convinced I was going to die soon and determined to drain every last cent so that not even my family would inherit a penny. When I woke up, I pretended to be confused by the contract and asked for his help to understand it. He hugged me tightly, assured me he'd handle everything, and told me I just needed to trust him, as if that still meant anything. Later that day, I went straight back to my lawyer. I handed him the document and showed him every detail. He didn't sugarcoat it. "This man is trying to erase everything that belongs to you." In that moment, I wasn't a fragile patient anymore. I was a woman preparing to strike back. I started waking up different, stronger, more certain. The kind of certainty that no longer trembles. Because when a woman bleeds in silence long enough, there comes a moment when she stops crying and starts acting. I made myself a cup of tea, put lipstick on my cracked lips, and opened my laptop. My lawyer had messaged me, "It's all here, Emily. We've got enough. The bank statements, the recordings, the documents, the fake contract with the Canadian clinic, the attempt to move your private fund, the account under the mistress's name, even the request to remove you from your own life insurance." This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was premeditated. It was criminal. Ryan left saying he was heading to the pharmacy for vitamins, but I knew exactly where he was going. Straight to that lakeside apartment, the one with the perfect view for his fresh start. Before the door even closed behind him, I was already on the phone with the bank, freezing accounts, locking funds, initiating official traces. My lawyer guided me step by step via video call. At the same time, I sent a short text to Jessica from my phone. "I know everything." Then I left the phone turned off on the counter so they couldn't track it. Immediately after, I emailed all the documents to my lawyer and to myself, safely encrypted as backup. If anything happened, nothing would be lost. Before I left the house, I changed my clothes. No headscarf. No pale face. I put on my mother's red blouse, a firm pair of jeans, and my lipstick. For the first time in months, I looked at myself in the mirror without fear, and saw myself whole, alive. I arrived at the lawyer's office at exactly 2 p.m. The complaint was officially filed right then and there, with all the evidence attached and an immediate request to freeze assets in both his and her names. The plan was no longer just mine. Now it was in the hands of the law. And when Ryan returned home, he found the locks changed and a note waiting for him. "You thought I was weak. Now you'll feel the weight of my strength." He had no idea what was about to hit him. It took less than an hour. Ryan's phone started ringing nonstop. First the bank, then the accountant, and finally his lawyer, or should I say our lawyer up until 2 weeks ago. From my sister's house, I watched it all unfold on my tablet while sipping tea, my hand gently resting over my still swollen stomach. The joint account was frozen, and the complaint's evidence had already been forwarded to the financial fraud unit. Within 2 days, the assets under Jessica's name were also pulled into the investigation. Jessica tried to act fast. She attempted to withdraw money to hide assets, but it was too late. The address of their so-called fresh start was now under court order. Ryan called me 10 times. Then came the messages, begging, blaming, crying. "Emily, what did you do?" One read, "You're going to destroy everything out of spite," said another. But he was the one who destroyed everything. I was simply protecting myself. Jessica meanwhile vanished. She returned the car, changed her number, and quietly stepped down from a role she was never supposed to have. Ryan chased after her, only to discover she was already meeting with lawyers. That's how fear works. When it strikes, everyone runs, and those who once conspired together scatter alone. That night, I locked my bedroom door and slept peacefully, my plan fully in motion. Ryan still believed he had won, still thought I was too weak to fight back. What he didn't know was that I had already won. His downfall was only a matter of time. A while later, I returned to the hospital. No tears. No fear. My latest medical report showed something different. Stable, hopeful. The doctor looked surprised and said, "You look stronger." And I smiled because it was true. My body still bore the scars, but my spirit was finally standing tall again. I didn't say a word about what was unfolding in court. I simply continued my treatment. But behind the scarf, the soft clothes, and the calm demeanor stood a woman at war, and that war was now public. Ryan had been formally summoned to testify. The case moved forward on 2 fronts: civil for the asset misappropriation and criminal for fraud and embezzlement. Once he received the subpoena, he called, sent voice messages, emails. It was a mistake. I was lost. Jessica manipulated me. But none of it shook me. This time I had the truth. I had the evidence. And I had time on my side. The district attorney's office held everything. The recordings, the bank transfers, the fake clinic contract, the document he tried to trick me into signing that would have stripped me of all my assets. At the preliminary hearing, Ryan tried to play the victim. Claimed he acted out of desperation, said Jessica seduced him. But the judge stared him straight in the eyes and said, "You didn't seem so desperate when you were buying $900 French wine." The room went silent. And in that moment I knew he wouldn't get away with it. Justice, which so often seems blind, saw everything this time. Later that evening my lawyer called and said, "Emily, it's just a matter of time. He's going to pay for everything." I hung up feeling a calm I hadn't known for months. I could finally breathe again. The following week I visited the salon. I took off the scarf and cut what little hair had grown back. Looking into the mirror I saw myself. Not the woman I was before, but someone stronger, someone reborn. I started walking more, eating better, picking up small routines. And every time the painful memories surfaced, I took a deep breath and reminded myself he didn't kill me. He taught me how to live. My mother always said the most powerful revenge is the one carried out with dignity. And sitting back watching Ryan be judged, humiliated, and lose everything without me ever raising my voice, was exactly that. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to stoop to his level. All I had to do was survive. And I did, more alive than ever. The judge made it crystal clear when delivering the sentence. 3 years in prison, no parole, partial loss of civil rights, and full restitution of the stolen funds. Ryan wept, begged, said prison would ruin him, that it would break him. But by that point no one cared. The victim of that story had a name, a face, and she now stood tall, looking her abuser directly in the eye. Jessica had tried to disappear, but the police eventually found her. She was sentenced to 2 years. At my final chemo session, the nurses stood around me and applauded. The tumor had shrunk. Today Ryan lives with his mother, the woman who had always hated me, but now even she calls him the shame of the family. Me. I sleep peacefully with clean scans and a clean name. Slowly I reclaimed everything. My body, my self-worth, my will to live. I even got a small tattoo on my wrist, the letter D for Dawson, my mother's last name, as a reminder of the strength she passed on to me. I started walking in the park again, cooking my own meals, and I realized that true revenge wasn't watching him suffer. It was seeing myself happy again, without fear, without pain, and without him. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment for Emily. She'll read every single one.